Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Release.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close. The hair high, right? Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, it's lovely to be back. I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How are your legs feeling this morning?
A little tired, to be honest. A little tired. We played softball last night, and even though it was half as many games as last week, legs feeling it a bit.
Yeah, me too. And I'm wondering if I'm just getting old. Monday, I did some deadlifting, and then yesterday some softball.
Mm-hmm.
Today I did some core stuff, but like my legs are sore. Just I don't know, going up the stairs, just it's not as free and easy as it used to be.
Well, Scott, do you stretch frequently?
I wouldn't say frequently, no.
Okay. See, I have found that to be useful. I'm a daily evening stretcher before I go to bed. Like to do a little stretching, mostly for my back, to be honest, because when I don't do it, I notice it on the back, but certainly the legs, hammies, really helps out.
Yeah, those hammies get tight pretty quick. So that's one nice tip that you have, Sean. And I hope you're going to deliver quite a few more, because what are we talking about today?
Well, we are 5 days away as we record this from our debut on the curling ice for the 2024-2025 season. And we thought we would go through and talk about expectations for the year and how you prep for the year, both for people who are playing, but also for us fans, and things we might expect to see from the elite teams as we go into the real part of the competitive season. Yeah, okay, things have already happened. Stuff's going on. That's great. The points bet is ongoing as we record this. The first 4 games took place this afternoon. We're recording Wednesday evening. Games are ongoing as we are talking. And the News Fairy dropped a bit of news for us earlier today from out there in Alberta, which we will get to a little later. But we really wanted to focus at the start here on how you prep for your season. A lot of folks are getting ready to go out. I think we are some of the earlier starters from various places across the country at the rec level. Usually it's Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, in that range, depending on where you live. So it's coming. Today was cold here in the nation's capital. The rain didn't help. And our OC Transpo system made it feel colder for me as well. But that's neither here nor there. It did, though, get me a bit into the mood for curling. So, Scott, for you, just in broad strokes, how do you like to prepare for a curling season?
So I mentioned, Sean, that I was doing some working out. That's something that's relatively new to my regimen. Over the last couple of years, I've started regularly working out, and so reaping the benefits of that. But when it comes to curling, there's a few special things that I like to do to start to incorporate into my workout. And a lot of it is to do with hip mobility. So for me, I have like super tight hips. So I do like some 90-90 stretches, which is like going back and forth, side to side with your knees at 90-degree angles on the ground to try and, loosen up the joints, like kind of lubricate the ball and socket there. Mm-hmm. I try to do that, do a little figure 4 stretching, stretch that glute muscle out, make sure that all of that is nice and limber. A few other stretches, but then also do work on some sort of dynamic like power activities, mostly for the legs. So you're sort of simulating what you do when you slide out, especially on a big weight shot. So I'll do like some box jumps, incorporate those into my plan, and just make sure that the muscles are ready to go to do what you need to do on the ice. The other thing I've found in the last couple of years that's good is Who knew that tightening your core when you're sliding gives you better balance?
Yeah,
So,
weird that.
it's like I've always been bad at balance beams and stuff, and then I was like, oh, all I have to do is engage my core muscles, and then it's way easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting sort of set to be able to do that. I think those are the main things that I do to get ready for curling physically.
Mhm.
How about for you?
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff. What I wrote down was hips for sure. The 90-90 for people who like yoga, that'd be a recline twist. Same,
Okay.
the same thing. So if you're in that, again, a pigeon pose, that really
Mhm.
does open up the hips as well. So I like those. Even just like lunges in that sort of thing, like
Yeah.
having that to open up your hip is very helpful. I agree totally on the core as well. I have a balance ball that I like to incorporate and use. I don't like to just sit on it while I'm working or whatever, but it's something that you can just sit on while you're working, and it forces you to engage not just the front of your core, but it helps your back as well. I
Mhm.
think oftentimes people think core and think, six pack abs and stuff, but it's like the whole of your trunk.
Mhm.
So that includes your hips, glutes, and certainly your back. You want to have a good back just for life purposes, if you can. Bad backs are not fun from what I've
Yeah.
seen and been told. So if you can have something that helps your back is really good. The other thing for me, Scott, is shoulders. And
Mm.
this doesn't apply to you as someone who only skips, but for those of us who play the entire game, we do need to have some good strength in our shoulders, or at least just so that we don't hopefully have any repetitive use type injuries or anything that could really damage the shoulder. So for me, it's a lot of like push-ups or just lateral raises with light-ish weights. I have
Mhm.
15s at my house, and that's really the only weights that I use. So just some lateral raises like that. Another thing that you can do too, I like, they're called surrenders, I think, where you'll hold your hands above your head with weights or without weights, and then you go down one knee at a time to sort of almost, well, so you're on your knees, and then you take your hand back to touch your foot on both sides and back up one at a time. I find that really good for both shoulders and hips, to be quite honest. And another one that's to open up the shoulders a little bit too is where you have a kettlebell, and you kind of do hip thrusters, and it puts the arms up. You're not lifting the weight with your arms; it's all in the hips, which is good. But I find that loosens up. It feels like it loosens my arms a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, in doing that. So those sorts of things, just to kind of keep it loose, but also get some strength in the shoulders. And then, as I said, I'm a big stretcher. So
Mhm.
every night I like to stretch out, and just cools down, sort of a chance to shed everything for the day, but making sure your shoulders and your arms are loose in that is a big part of it for sure.
Yeah, Sean, maybe what you can do is like in the show notes post a little bit of your stretching routine, cuz
Hmm.
I should do it too, and my shoulders are really bad. I was doing a lot of stuff like on my shoulders today, so like planks and
Hmm.
mountain climbers, and so I was like really using my shoulders a lot, and
Yeah.
so and it sucks.
Yeah.
uh but yeah, now I feel like, oh yeah, tight.
Yeah.
And even when you're skipping, you should have loose shoulders to be able to do that big backswing, when you're throwing
Yeah.
huge.
There you go. Yeah. So those are some of the physical things that we like to do in terms of prepping. Another one for me, Scott, just because you mentioned balance, I like doing just one-legged poses and when I'm doing yoga stuff, like those balance practices, just
Hmm.
getting used to being on one leg, because when you're throwing, essentially you're on just the one leg. So I
Yeah.
find those really helpful, as well as just, again, not only for curling, but just generally speaking, living in a northern climate. And I walk home every day through a park that doesn't get winter maintenance very well. So making sure I'm good on my feet, or can maintain some balance, is very helpful. And even just in a northern climate generally, uh,
It definitely
you know,
definitely
got
is.
to
And
deal with
yeah,
ice. So
good balance is indicative of strong core, and so they work hand in hand.
Yeah. So that's some of the physical prep, Scott. Another element, and your ice makers will thank you for prepping your equipment, making sure that everything is in good working order. The one that I always hear about is your gripper, that you
Mhm.
want to make sure you have your gripper. And here's something that I think a lot of players don't recognize or necessarily appreciate. Shoes can last a long time. Your curling shoes can last you, depending on how much you play, 5-10 years even, right? Like they
Oh
can,
yeah.
if you take care of them properly. Your gripper can't last that long. It just,
No.
it can't. You do have to replace it. Otherwise it leaves marks on the ice. And Scott, you have been an ice maker in your time in and around curling clubs. Like, how damaging is a bad gripper, or can bad grippers be to a surface?
Well, there's two ways that they can be bad, and the first way, which is most common, is that little rubber flecks come off the shoe and they embed themselves in the ice. And since they're really small, they sometimes evade, the sweepers or whatever. So they really only come off when you scrape. And sometimes if they don't, then they sort of work their way in
Hmm.
and get embedded deep in the ice, which you'd think, oh, well, that's fine. It's like under the surface. But what it does, it changes the temperature just ever so much in that one spot. And so if you have a bunch of them, you could end up with like some weird variations all over the ice. So really bad when the grippers are old and getting little bits of rubber coming onto the ice. And the other way is that if your gripper is old and it gets thin, so it gets thinner, there's going to be more heat transfer from your shoe or from your foot down onto the ice, which can leave more sort of gripper marks from the time that you're walking around. So that's also that's less damaging, I would say, and less common, unless you're really like wearing out the gripper so that it's so thin that there's almost almost like a full gap. But yeah, those are not good for the ice. It creates headaches for the ice maker, and it costs more money when you do have to do more maintenance. Like if you have to do a burn, sometimes the ice makers, they'll burn the ice, and what it does is it sort of melts the top layer and all the debris floats to the top, and then they let it, well, they don't let it, but as the machine passes, that sort of refreezes as it goes by, and then you do a big scrape, so you get all the dirt to float to the top and scrape it all, but that costs a lot of money to do a burn like
Sure.
that.
Right.
And then the other option is to flood, but again, then you're just sort of flooding over the problem again. Takes a long time, takes the club out of service for probably a weekend. So big money losers, those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So you definitely want to have those grippers in, replaced pretty regularly. The other one too, Scott, if you have discs, so my shoes have discs, both
Mhm.
for the slider foot, but also on the push foot as well. So you want to replace those discs on the push foot as well, because they're doing the same thing as a
Yeah.
worn out gripper is. I don't know. You don't have discs on your push foot, do you? It's just a flat.
No, I do. I got those gold line shoes that have a bunch of discs. I think they have
Oh, right,
7
because they always come out.
because
Yes.
they fall off because
Yeah.
I push so hard and throw with such power.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah, so I do.
if you have a shoe that is a little older on the push side, on your push foot, you could just get a gripper for that. If it's starting to thin out, or you're noticing that you're leaving marks on the ice, you can get a new gripper to cover that,
Mhm.
if you would like to. So that can sort of solve that. And then if you want new sliders too, Scott, old sliders, can they scratch the ice, or is there any harm to having an older slider?
I don't think there's too much. When the Teflon ones get old, they just get not as effective
Hmm.
because you can get dents in them and sort of little runs. So you're not going to slide as fast on an older slider. And yeah, there can be debris that collects kind of in those little dents and runs, and that can fall off onto the ice too. I guess in an extreme case, it could, if you slide out, you've got something stuck under your foot, you can create a line, right, from the
Yes.
hack out. So also not great for the ice. So take care to check in and see what the condition is. And if you're unsure, there's a lot of places on the internet that you can go to look for new shoes, but a lot of curling centers will have somebody there that's either able to sell you something directly or point you in the right direction. The membership at a lot of centers really do know the best places to go and get stuff around town.
Yeah. And again, if you have discs, you can rotate them 90 degrees too. That can help prevent some of those runs, as well as another tip for your slider. Another thing, basically, we're talking about stuff that's in contact with the ice. Broom heads as well. You want to make sure your broom head is in good order. Now, I would never do this, but I have heard tell of somebody who used a broom head so long that the screw that keeps the broom head in place was actually able to make contact with the ice and potentially helped that team make more shots than was warranted, because you're cheating at that point, but you are also damaging the ice. So, you want to make sure that you're replacing your broom head, certainly before that happens.
Absolutely, before that happens. Yeah, I think broom heads in general can last, depending how much you play, last probably between, for a rec player playing twice a week, you should probably replace it at halfway through your season.
Yeah, I think so.
A season is probably pushing it a bit, but you can definitely do it. For me, when I'm skipping, since I don't sweep that much, I don't feel the need to replace it as often, but I do notice that it's dirty. So if you notice that it's dirty, make sure to keep it clean. Even if you're not sweeping that much, it can pick up stuff off the ice. And yeah, just make sure your team can still see it, because if you got a neon broom head but it's all covered with dirt, then what's the use?
Yeah, I certainly, when you see a skip with a black broom head and wearing black pants, it's kind of like, wait a minute, what
are we doing here?
I can't see that at all. So you want to make sure those are in order. And if you use gloves, I mean, I'm guilty of, I've had gloves that I said I was going to throw out for the past 5 years, but they're so comfy and they're not fully ripped yet. So, but if you need new gloves, you don't want to get those blisters. So those are always good to get. I think, Scott, that I haven't done it, but I do like the headwear that has the padding in the back. I do think that those are a good idea, that if you're looking for a curling specific headwear, getting something that has that padding in the back, if you're worried about appearance, they look a lot better than they did 5 years ago. So those can be a good investment as well. Depending on how cold your club is, you want to make sure you've got the proper layers on, because I think layering in curling is important. That if you get too hot, you take off a layer, but you don't want to be too cold either. So, layers I'm a fan of. But any other equipment things though that you want to highlight?
Layers is a good point, Sean, especially early in the season when you're sort of like, oh, it's kind of warm out, and you don't bring a sweater.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh shoot, what am I going to wear on the ice? Or just make sure to put some thought into the layers. Because I've done it before. I've shown up and been like, shoot, I forgot to bring my base layer. I've only got a t-shirt. And you do it. It's fine, but
it's not ideal.
It's not comfortable.
No. And then the last thing in terms of prepping for your rec season, again, I know we're at the rec level and people are out to have a good time for the most part, that you shouldn't really be too concerned about winning and losing. But I think you should have a chance before you go out your first game, talk with your team. What are the expectations? Even if you've played together for a while, like, what's the season about for you? Like, were there any issues last year that maybe you want to address this year? Or certainly if you're a new team, you want to make sure everyone's on the same page and what the expectations are, how you want to act out on the ice, engage with each other. Does somebody like a lot of feedback? Does somebody want no feedback? Like, what is going to make the experience the most fun for you and your teammates? I think just making sure that you have that conversation can avoid problems later on or make conversations later on much, much easier because you've had that establishment of what this season is and how you're all going to interact on the team. So I think that is, for as much as physical and equipment prep is important, I think that's the one that is the biggest key to having a good time over the course of a curling season.
Yeah, Sean, nothing ruins it like somebody having wildly different expectations than the rest of the team, and either caring too much or way too little. Either way, uh, it makes sure that like the expectations of this is what we're going to do is important. um and yeah, like even knowing that you have different expectations is better than stepping in blind and then getting annoyed at somebody, right? If you say, okay, well, I know Sean, he's just there to have a good time. I'm not gonna yell at him because he's not taking it seriously enough or whatever, right? Like, fine, it's good. But you're right, having that conversation and outlining those expectations really makes a lot of sense.
So that's what we have at the rec level in terms of prep. Let us know what you do and how you and your teams get ready for a season out there. Scott, we're also fans though, so we have to prep for the season as fans. And there are a few things that I am looking forward to or maybe prepping for the season. One of which happened earlier today, and that is lineup changes. That there are bound to be some lineup changes at the elite level. Maybe not so much during the season, but who knows? Certainly after the season, in this ramp up to the Olympic trials at all around the world, all the various countries that are going to be going into Olympic trials. And we had our first change of the season earlier today. Jacques Gauthier was cut from Team Kui. The announcement came from the team, said they parted ways, and then Jacques Gauthier in a Twitter post said that he had been cut. So that's why I'm going to use that word, because that's what Jacques Gauthier used. It basically said that the team felt he wasn't performing up to expectations, and they decided to go in a different direction. Not quite sure what that direction is. When you look around the landscape, hard to think that they'd pull somebody off an existing team. It's possible, of course, but hard to imagine. So you look at where all the free agents are. There are some ideas that I have. I don't want to wildly speculate as to what those ideas could be, but there are names out there that can perform at a very high level and play the second position.
It's John Morris, isn't it, Sean? That's my wild speculation.
So our friend Steph, who we play with, texted us like, who are the free agents? And I was like, yeah, it's maybe there's, well, I threw out Kirk Myers. Could they talk Kirk Myers into coming? Adam Casey is always floating around out there as somebody who can come in. But you can never count out a John Morris comeback in the lead up to an Olympics. You just can't. You can't do it. So who knows on that one? I don't know. Would Tyler Tardy go play second? Because John Morris, I don't think would play. Maybe he could. I don't know.
Well, Jacques Gauthier was calling the shots for Kevin, and Tyler's been sweeping. So
right.
You could throw second rocks and stay in the house. They played together before.
They did. Yeah. So maybe it could be that. It could be, who knows? There's so many young guys out there who could slide in and put together or become the second on a team. But the timing is very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. So Jacques Gauthier is out. Kevin Kui will have a new second at some point. We're curious to see what Jacques Gauthier does with the rest of his season here on the 4-person side. So keep tabs on that. But yeah, lineup change is certainly something that we'll be looking at over the course of the season. Scott, we mentioned it last week when we did the schedule watch. I am very excited for the European A Championship. Team England on the men's side in the A Euros for the first time. Jonathan is in this event. I don't think I've ever paid for any of the World Curling stuff since they've gone to the stream stuff and you have to pay. I've never paid for it. I've gotten credits through other
Mhm.
means. I might pay for this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I might do. It'll be really fun to watch these events and see our friend up there, playing at the highest level in Europe. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. And not to mention, like, it should be a pretty fun event overall, with some people looking to qualify for the worlds and all the sort of points that go into it. I think it'll be really, really good competition and sort of the last major tune up. I guess not this year won't be the last major tune up. Yeah. But sort of getting into the worlds and then getting your association qualified for those Olympics, this Europeans is going to be pretty important.
Absolutely. So it'll be a lot of fun to keep tabs on that. And then the other one, Scott, for me is the Olympic qualification or for the qualification for the Olympic curling trials here in Canada. With the new format for the qualification on the trials, we already have 2 teams that are set into the Olympic curling trials. Your 2024 champions of the Scotties and the Brier. So those being Brad Gushu and Rachel Homan, both did qualify based on their top 6 finishes at the World Championship. So they are in. And the leading team in the 2023-2024 CTRS standings also has qualified for the Canadian Olympic curling trials. Scott, I will say that Brad Gushu and Rachel Homan were the number 1 finishers in CTRS points last season. Would you like to take a guess on who the second place finishers were and who has had spots booked in the Olympic curling trials?
No.
Okay. Good choice, because I think this is unintentionally hilarious because neither skip is currently playing. Second place on the men's side is Brendan Botcher. Second place on the women's side is Jennifer Jones. Neither of those 2 skips are currently skipping a team in the 2024-2025 season, but their teams did stay together. So based on the rules, I'm making this assumption too, by the way, in the qualification announcement that Curling Canada put out, it didn't have anything about the 3 out of 4 players, but that is the rule for everything else. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that that is what plays forward. So that means that Chelsea Carey and Brad Jacobs have spots into the Olympic curling trials. So those 2 spots are accounted for. Then we also have the cumulative for this year and last year. So on the women's side, the next teams are Carrie Anderson, Caitlin Laws, Selena Sturmey are the next 3. So they're in the pole position for this year for those other spots. On the men's side, it's Mike McEwen, Matt Dunstone, and Kevin Cooey. So those are the teams that you're looking at for the trials. And then you'll have, of course, the winner of the Scotties and the Brier this year, provided they finish top 6 at the Worlds. And then, of course, you have the pre-trials next year. So how that is all going to shape up in terms of the Olympic qualification or trials qualification here in Canada will be interesting to watch and see if any big names, people who you just assume will be there, will have to go through that pre-trial event, which is different this time with only 1 pre-trial qualifier instead of 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having one less opportunity, to get out of the pre-trials. It could make a difference, like we've seen some good teams come through the pre-trials and do quite well at the trials. Did one team win once? I think so. I think Brad Jacobs' team did come through the pre-trials. And
no, they had won the Brier the year before.
Okay.
They were the defending Brier champion. I mean, John Morris made it to the final out of that. Out of the pre-qualification spot. Maybe it could have been Gushu in 2005.
I will look that up while we are talking.
Okay. So certainly the pre-trial teams have had success, and there have been multiple final appearances for pre-trial teams. Don't know if anyone has won the event out of the pre-trials, though. So it'll be fun to see that over the course of the season, and to whether or not other countries go trials routes or by announcing teams. We've seen a variety of strategies from other countries in the past and what they're going with. I think it'll be very interesting to see what's going on in the United States. In particular, is there going to be a changing of the guard? We thought that before the 2022 games, going into those trials, and then John Schuster said, "No, I'm still here." And so we'll see if John Schuster does that again this year, or if Corey Dropkin or some of the other really good young teams there in the United States can finally catch up to him. So some interesting things to watch relative to the Olympics specifically this year.
That's right.
All right. And one other thing, Scott, that I want to talk about related to this curling season. Let's get back to the recreational level a little bit. But there is, of course, the financial component of curling. And I, for the past few years, have kept a spreadsheet detailing all of my curling exploits. And therefore, by extension, because you play or we play together and you don't play another night, therefore, by extension, your curling exploits as well. So, Scott, I keep track of wins and losses, the number of points scored for and against, the number of ends played, and therefore also the number of shots thrown. And then I tally it all up at the end of the year. And then I tally up all of my expenses and figure out how much each shot cost me.
I like that.
Yes. So, Scott, last year on Monday nights, I will also note, if I'm not there, the game doesn't happen. I don't care. So it's a tree in the forest situation.
Exactly.
So Monday nights, I played 19 games last year. I don't think you were at all 19 of those games that I played in, but whatever. It's 19 games. What do you think our record was in those 19 games?
I think we were 9-10.
And you are correct. We were 9-10. What do you think our point differential was?
Well, that's a tougher one. It's probably negative because I feel like we won close and lost big.
Right.
So I don't know, -8.
Close. It was -7 actually. So we scored 102 points, gave up 109 points, played 130 ends in those 19 games. So that works out to 6.8 ends per game. So a little lower than I would like, to be honest. But
I mean, I think if we're shaking early, and that's what got us that, instead of not playing 8 because we couldn't.
Sure.
Then it's okay.
Yes. So on my Thursday league, 10-9 actually in the games I was at. So I was 19-19 on the weeknight regular games I was in. 121 points for, 108 points against. So for the season, I was +6 points. More points scored in the Thursday league than on the Monday league, which does not surprise me. A little more defensive on Monday nights, and also overall a higher level of shot making. So stones get removed at a higher frequency and there's not as many flashed hits and things like that. So you can, not that Thursday's bad, but Monday's a little better. That's all. And so the more points in play, 137 ends over those 19 games. So that works out to 7.2. And I will note that other people in the Thursday league have told me, well, you can only ever play 7 ends. Well, if I average over 7 ends, then pick up the pace because it's your fault for that.
Exactly.
So I also played as a spare once. That game was won 7-2 in 6 ends. And then I had 8 games in spiels, going 5-3 with a positive point differential of 4, so 40-36. So overall for the season, I was 25-22 and threw 630 shots for the curling season.
630 shots.
Yeah.
It's important to get that body in shape then.
That's right. That's a lot. So yeah, 630 between the registration fee, and I bought a new broom head, and not like the sweeping thing, the actual plastic part that goes into the handle. So I needed a new one of those.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I had extra broom heads, like the fabric part. I had a bunch of those, so I didn't need new broom heads last year because I had overbought the season before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only piece of equipment I needed last year. So I was $905.69 on equipment. Bar tab for the year was $438.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yes, I will note that the previous season, the 2022-2023 season, my bar tab was in the $800 range. This was a conscious choice on my part to try to reduce the amount, not just that I was spending, but that I was consuming after games. And so I made the decision. I didn't do it 100% of the time, but I did it a lot, where especially this happens late games on Mondays. If the opponent didn't want anything, I didn't have anything either. So that was one for sure. And there were nights that I just wasn't feeling like having a beer or having really anything. So I'll sit and hang out, but I just wasn't really feeling it. So part of it was conscious. Part of it was just, I don't even know what it was. Maybe it was, I moved it in December, so longer to get home. I think that actually probably did factor in. Like if I'm walking home, there are a lot of nights in my 10-minute walk where like it's January, you've had a couple beers and you really got to go to the bathroom when you're out in the minus 15 weather. Not being worried about getting all the way home on that might have been part of it. But yeah, just in general, I part of it was conscious, part of it was circumstance. So I was down on alcohol. So for the season, my total expenditure at curling was $1,343.69.
Canadian dollars.
Canadian dollars, yes. So, about a nickel American. So I think that's a pretty good investment, right? For 38 nights out over the course of the season. The spiels aren't necessarily nights out. There were 1-day spiels, each of them. So that works out to 3 extra days out. So I think that's pretty good for all that activity over the course of a winter.
Yeah, like that's like $40 a game, thereabouts.
So 47 games, no, a little less actually. So it'd be 30-ish a game.
So I mean, if you think you're gonna go out and spend have a night out where you get some physical activity and some social times, that's really not that expensive.
Especially in the winter
economy.
Right, like, but in the winter too, right, where it's easy to just kind of hibernate a bit, and
for sure,
this forces you out a bit. Also, Monday nights, nobody ever wants to go do anything on Monday nights, so I love playing Monday nights for that reason. It forces you to get out on a night where otherwise you are just going to be at home. So I really like that aspect of it. So Scott, 630 shots, $1,343.69. That works out to $2.13 for each shot I took last season. Now, of course, curling is more than just the shots. You're also, I sweep on Thursday nights. I play third, so calling lines. There's a lot of other things going on, so you can't necessarily break it down to per shot in terms of total value, but I'm going to. So $2.13 per shot for me for the 2023-2024 season.
Pretty good. That's good to know and to remember as we get into the season, and as you're taking your shot, you're like, okay, this is $2 here. I better focus up. Don't want to just throw this away.
Yep.
Right. Let's focus. Let's make it. Yeah. Some pretty good motivation.
Yeah. And so if you're a lead and your skip says, just throw this one through, be like, no, I'm throwing money away.
I'm paying $2 for this shot.
I'm actually going to play this damn shot. So there you go. I would encourage everybody or anybody who plays to do this. I have found it a lot more fun than I expected to do it. I know our buddy Dean does this, but he does it from the perspective of, I think, just wins and losses and seeing how he matches up against other teams. I don't keep track of who the other team is. It's really more for me. I started doing it because of the pace of play and people saying to me all the time that, oh, you can't play more than 6 or more than 7. I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to actually keep track and see how many ends we're playing. And then I just thought, well, if I'm doing that, let me just see what the scores are and track wins and losses as well, just out of curiosity. And then it grew into, all right, well, if I'm doing ends, let's do shots as well, which is pretty easy. Obviously, just multiply it by 2 with some exceptions where you're playing with 3. And I always do take note of that. But having that total, it's not so much to think of it like, oh, this is actually what it cost me per shot, but that is an easy number to remember. And I can sort of keep track of that value, for lack of a better term, as to what the total outlay is over the course of the season. So every night when I get home from a game, I try to remember to put it in. I do put in my phone what the score is when I'm at the club, because otherwise I will forget, because I don't ultimately care what the score is. Sometimes if I forget to do that, we do have on the Ottawa Curling Club, you can see what the point differential was. And usually the point differential, the next day I can remember what the score is if I see the point differential. Right. So I put that in. If I know what it cost me at the bar, I'll put that in right away. If I can't remember what it was, like if it's 2 beers, it's usually with tip for me, $18. But if the other person didn't get one, or I didn't get one, or just got one of the sodas or whatever, then I wait. And when I look at my credit card bill, which I do every week, then I'll put in the total cost. But the curling specific information I try to put in night of, and then it's there, forget about it. And you just tally it up at the end of the year.
There you go. There you go. So maybe I will try to do this year, Sean, and we'll see if our numbers line up.
See if they match up. So I just have an Excel sheet that now goes back 4 or 5 years. So just add a new tab every season.
Nice. I like this. And maybe some other people will find this useful for tracking, how much fun they have per dollar.
There you go. Yeah. What's your fun quotient for the season? So if you want to try that, let us know how it goes for you. And if you've done something like this, or if you have a different way of tracking your season, definitely would be curious to see what you do and how you track your season and the information that you track, whether if it's different from what I do. Be curious to know what's important to you to keep track of. So do feel free to reach out, because we are on the socials at Game of Stones Pod. We're Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com if you want to let us know what you got going on. And of course, if you have not yet, please do subscribe wherever you get your shows, likes, rates, comments, all that good stuff. Helps other people find the show, keeps us growing. And you can head on over to gameofstonespod.com. All of our past episodes are there, plus a link to the merch if you want to look snazzy out on the curling ice this season. We got some stuff for you there on the merch side with the toques, the hats, hoodies, all that stuff is there and available for you. Scott, curling is starting, baseball is wrapping up, and we still have a rain check for a golf game. So there's a lot going on here over the next few weeks.
That's true. And we did talk about maybe doing that one of the days coming up. So yeah, we got to get in touch about that, Sean. We'll talk about it offline, because it'd be nice to get out there and hit the links one more time. The rest of the week looks beautiful. Here in Ottawa, about 22 degrees for the high, pretty sunny till next weekend. So everyone out there, take advantage. I know Dad said he was golfing like 3 times last week. So
wow, okay.
Get out while the getting's good.
Yep, but enjoy this weather. Leaves are finally starting to change here in the Ottawa Valley, so get out. I should say while you can, while it's still warm. Oh, you can't go outside in the winter either. There's some beautiful winter days coming up, but while the weather's warm, get that last bit of summer into the fall, and we'll get ready for a lot of curling coming up and a lot of curling talk. So we'll be back with you again real soon. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.